Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, sir, for joining for the session. So today we are going to start our second chapter of the workshop, The Art of Mooting, and we today have with us that is Afzal Badr Khan. I would like to bit introduce him to you people that he has graduated in 2015 and he is actively practicing before the Delhi High Court. He has the experience of from past 7 years. He has practiced in Bombay, Delhi, and various commercial matters with a particular focus on arbitration and intellectual property rights. Right now, he's working in Delhi. He's practicing in Delhi as a senior advocate, and he's associated with S. Majumdar and Company as an advocate associate. And Mr. Khan has argued and assisted in several landmark IP cases before the Delhi High Court and addressed issues relating to the interpretation of patent claims, appreciation of design rights, and under the Design Act, right to cross-examine in the IP forums, as well as trademark comparison in pharmaceutical and nutraceutical goods. This is the basic to know, but the main thing to know is that he's highly active and participated in various moot court competitions, international and national, and he has interest in academia, and he has various publications under his name in a very reputed journal such as Stockholm Intellectual Property Law Review. Basically, I'll just put a small structure which we are going to perform today in the workshop. We'll be starting with the proposition, a proposition which has been already shared with you people. So you can have questionnaires regarding the proposition. After that, a general talk regarding the topic which we chapter which we are discussing, and after that, you can have questionnaires regarding the topic and any other general question you have from sir. Sir, over to you. I think.
Thank you so much, Sonali. Just a clarification, I'm not a senior advocate, lest I be accused of misrepresentation. So I'm just an associate at the current firm, and I'd be happy to share my experiences with you in mooting and whatever other structures that we come to discuss. So I understand today's workshop would be with very young people who I can't see and converse in the current state of affairs. So let me just give you an insight into what, as a law student, I felt about mooting. In my experience, I thought about mooting, and where I thought it will take me. Uh, any activity has a certain skill set, and it's not about uh, finding whether you have that skill set or not. It's about taking the best and recognizing the worst in each, and vetting your own skill sets in the desired shape and future that you look for in yourself. So coming from a non lawyer's background, I was always keen in looking for a future in practice, and that's an area where moot court has a significant role to play. Be that as it may, it's not always the case that moot court or debating is an palatable exercise for all. I can understand everyone has a certain skill set, but it's something that I would encourage everyone to start with, because even if you don't have the inclination to a particular, let's just say, adversarial setup or a profession down the line, it gives you an insight into what your own qualities are. And many of you who are exploring law to begin with and exploring your own skill sets to begin with will be surprised as to what you enjoy, or what qualities you have that you never knew you wanted, or you had it in you. For instance, I am a regular IP practitioner. Most of the cases on commercial side I have are mostly intellectual property related, and I understand a lot of students here are pursuing IP honors. So it'll be something that is educative in that respect. My interest in IP has stemmed from one simple moot proposition, which was broken down into the concept of, at that point, the case of Natco versus Bayer, which I'm not sure how many of you have been familiarized with, was pertaining to whether a pharmaceuticals company's right against a pharmaceutical drug can weigh higher than public interest, and if at all, what is the balance that the Indian statute looks at in comparing the two standards, that is a right of an innovator who spends his resources, who invests its resources and money in developing pharmaceutical products, which are blockbuster drugs, which cure illnesses which could have never been fathomed of. And on the other hand, making those drugs available to the masses, to the public, because any innovation is only has a role to certain public interest, and without that, a statute has no place if it doesn't safeguard public interest. So the balance about monopoly and a right of an individual or an innovator or a company to innovate, which is crucial to any developing economy, and compared with the need of the public at large, is something that came across in one simple moot problem. And while that question or issue is a singular one and it's very academic, but it incited my interest and it allowed me to pursue a journey in intellectual property. And I've been so far happy practicing IP. And I speak for others. You may, based on one question, one aspect of law, find yourself so enthused, so romanticized, so eager to pursue that subject that it gives you certain direction. So do not look at this as a mere academic exercise. Look at it as a chance to explore your own skill set and your own passions that may help you find what you want to pursue down the line. So with that, coming to what today's workshop is about, I understand we will be discussing how you should go about reading a moot proposition and examining your line of action towards preparing for a moot problem. Um, with this, I would first like to talk about how moot courts are close, if not they give you a real experience as to what a court mannerism would be, but they at least allow you an insight as to how it would be if you were a practicing advocate. Now, of course, that skill set is very different from what is a skill set what is a skill set required at a corporate firm. And the requirement therein you're researching for a proposition, you're examining all sides of one particular question in pursuit of defending your argument or vetting your argument. That skill is invaluable in I'm sorry, I was logged out. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. I think you're audible.
Okay. All of a sudden it broke for some reason. Some things that are applicable in all formats of what you pursue, be it litigation, be it corporate practice, because such skills as research and looking at position from all aspects and cases and preparing for arguments, because trust me, when you're in a corporate setup, discussing it with your colleagues and seniors is no less than a debate, and it pretty much goes very passionately in all forms. So what you do when you are examining a moot problem is the first thing we'll look at. And as Sonali said, first I'll just drone on about how I would like to examine a moot problem. And then I believe there is a moot proposition which a lot of you would have been familiar with, would probably have dealt with in your core curriculum. We will examine that, and then finally we'll have the flow for questions and back and forth.
Sir, would you like me to share the preposition? I think you're facing a bit of a network issue.
Anyway. So the first thing is what you do when you hello.
See, you're audible, but I think you're facing some network issue. It's lagging a lot in between.
So you've shared the mood proposition.
Yeah. So is there any issue?
My apologies. I'm not sure if my connection is stable. Can you hear me, Sonali?
So you're audible, but I think your network is really weak. It's lagging a lot in middle. I think yes, because it's stopping a lot in middle.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, sorry. I think there was a lag where I couldn't understand if I'm connected or not. So now you can share the proposition on screen.
Sure, I'll do.
So, first things that I would appreciate whenever I have a proposition is something that you read the proposition again and again. The first step is to examine the proposition without any prejudices or a line of argument or a particular set of thoughts that you may have. Just examine the issue, examine the question as many times as possible till it seems that you're aware of each statement as to its implication or not. The first line of exercise is just identifying the problem and examining it. Then, once you've read the problem with an open mind and not, the idea is to just understand the facts and not probably the law at the initial point. Once you've done that, then the second exercise is you, because if whenever you're preparing for moots, there is a stage where if you have any doubts, you can pose clarifications. You can ask the concerned authorities or a concerned institution that there are certain aspects which seem not very clear, and we'll see what situations may arise in respect of this proposition. But you can always, there is a stage for clarification where you can pose your questions, pose your concerns that there might be an error, and after all, people drafting this are also humans, so there may be some or the other error which may be fundamental to the proposition itself. So in such cases, there is a stage where you can ask for clarifications from the concerned authority. Then coming to this proposition, the first step after you casually read it and casually read it as many times till you're comfortable, the first thing is to understand what the proposition is asking for, what the moot problem is about. Ordinarily, every moot is basically a point of law and a point of fact being used in respect of that law to find rival submissions on each issue. So the first step, once you've examined the moot problem, is to examine and weed out each issue. For instance, if this is contract law based moot proposition, then identify which questions under contract law would be applicable, which questions on fact, which questions on law. Divide the activity in two parts. And when you're dividing the activity in terms of facts, the first thing and the most fundamental thing is make a list of dates so that you have a chronology of how things have panned out and how this problem has come to present itself. Based on that situation, you examine the problem again in light of the issues you've identified. So first step, read the problem. Second step, identify the issues that are germane to the moot proposition, be it on law, be it on facts. divide them into that category. Then on facts, make a list of dates and events which present a chronology of how this moot problem came to be, and then review the moot proposition in perspective of the issues. Identify where each line will fit. Identify where each issue is being addressed or answered or raised questions about, or what fact would help in an argument for law. Then you weed out issues that overlap. Maybe sometimes you've identified multiple issues which may not be germane. So you identify that and then narrow your focus on what this moot problem is about. You may identify 10 issues to begin with and may end up with 2 or 3 of them finally. So always start with the most expansive approach and then narrow it down, weed it down, and distill it to a point where the relevant questions come to the fore. So we'll go about this proposition, and I'll not take everyone's time in reading out line by line, but I believe you'll have access to this, and I would want you to read the proposition firstly, generally, and after having done that exercise, we will look at it with a closer scrutiny. Now, for instance, let's just look at the second line. The company claimed that the production of such capsules is purely for the health and so on, so vitality of men, and therefore these capsules are one of the best diet health supplements, as these capsules are very effective and unique blend of so and so, so and so. Now, if I read this line on the first glance, what things do I mark out? I will see that the company claimed is an important word, because claim means that there is nothing substantial. It's not a matter of record. It's a matter of perspective. It may be puffery. It may be an exaggeration, but is this claim backed by scientific data? Is this claim a matter of fact? Certainly not from the looks of the statement. So you have to examine each statement's significance in the larger issues. So once you've examined the entire proposition, identify these issues. This moot problem concerns a product by the company, a very interesting name, Cockroach Limited. And what is the significance of this product? So you start with that this moot proposition is fundamentally on a breach of contract, and that concerns the product. So these submissions you'll weed out to see that this is a claim. If you go further, you will find such similar instances. The company announced in public that by taking. So this is the statement or information that the company made available. The company aggressively, now this word stands out, aggressively fixed each. It gives you the idea that the price of rupees 50 is comparatively cheaper than what the parallel products would be. So each word has a connotation which you need to identify in your larger scheme. So this advertisement of this claim of its well-being and its quality is in pursuit of inviting customers, giving them a reasoned or lesser than expected price is again an invitation. And then if you read the next line, it's in the interest, it's in the public interest that these capsules are prepared to boost immunity, so on and so forth. Now, this is a sales pitch. Now, interestingly, if you read the last line of the second paragraph, it says it improves the physical and mental health as well. Now, we started on the first line that it is the company's claim. Here arises your first question again, if you want to seek clarification or if you want to seek it as a matter of argument and keep it in your list of arsenals. It improves the physical and mental health as well as helps rejuvenate strength and body organs. Now, this statement is, for those who are aware of this problem, it goes on to become a point where one of the patients who've been consuming this medicine say that they've developed an addiction. Now, addiction is clearly something that affects mental health as well as physical health. So whether this statement is a claim, which it likely is, this is something you note down. Because see, the purpose of today's exercise is not to find an answer to the moot problem, is about finding an approach to the moot problem. And those answers, you in your experience and you with your research, you with your practice, will make better and adopt in a manner that helps you prepare for a moot. So one way to look at it is whether this statement helps you, but you note it down because it's a statement that becomes a fundamental part of your exercise in making or breaking a case. We move further. If you can just come down, there is a line in the company mentioned. Yes, just helps to stay fit. Huh. This line, the company mentioned in the advertisement that these capsules have not been evaluated. Now, this again is a red flag. The company mentions it, this disclaimer in its advertisements, and yet if people act upon it, what is the liability? If you and Something interesting that I noted was, if you come to if you go down, Sonali, I'll just request you to come down. Yes, just a little, I'm sorry, last part of the previous page. uh,
Is that fine, sir?
yeah, on media channels. Okay, so this date is something that, because I have a slightly different version of this problem. In my question, it says June 15, 2020. Anyways, so this date of June 15, 2014 stands out, that the advertisement was published on a certain date. Now, why this becomes relevant is because there's a disclaimer that this offer is not retrospectively applicable. And then let's look at what is the offer. That the statement, the next paragraph is the offer that this Cockroach P Limited offers is, it's applicable to any person who contracts with increasing fatigue, weakness, or any disease. Now, again, what is the affliction to our Mr. Kharak Singh? Whether that fits into the bracket or not, whether that's part of the contract or not, will become a question that is germane to this moot proposition. So, Sonali, you can scroll down. Yes. Now we come to our protagonist, Mr. Khadak Singh. He suffers certain afflictions which are already known to him. These afflictions are not new, or possibly or are already known to him. Now, based on this advertisement of Cockroach P Limited, he consumes this medication and follows the prescription to the letter. And later, Mr. Karan Singh discovers that on resuming the last paragraph, is that when he's due to stop the bodily changes. I'll just read this paragraph out. On the last line, he felt a lot of bodily changes due to stopping consumption of the capsules, such as frequent summers, so and so, so and so. However, Mr. Kharak Singh discovered that on resuming the consumption, he got relief from all bodily changes. So, is this question, is this moot proposition structured in a format where you have all the information available? From what it seems, there is quite enough information. Now, based on this information, how do you formulate your argument? One way to look at it is, you choose sides when you're reading the argument. But our first exercise has to be to read the problem without any sides, to read the problem and identify issues without choosing which side of the argument you're on. You may be Khadak Singh, you may be Cockroach Farm Private Limited. But the first and the primary exercise that you have to undertake is look at this question from not from either of the sides, but identify the key developments in each paragraph and mark them out. So now this aspect about Mr. Khadak Singh's prior afflictions and the resumption of those afflictions once he stops consuming suggests that he always had these afflictions. These afflictions are only kept at bay thanks to the product. So this becomes a particular argument which both sides can use. And you need to identify based on your position how to use it. Now we can go further down. He therefore claimed rupees 50,000 and other form of damages. The company bluntly ignored them. After a few days, Mr. Kharak Singh sent notice regarding his claims. On this notice, the company's officers replied with an anonymous letter that if it is used properly, the company had complete confidence in the capsule's efficacy. But to protect the company's claims against all fraudulent claims, they would need him to come to company's office to use the capsule each day and checked by the secretary. Mr. Kharak Singh now brought a claim before the court and is seeking justice. So now, yes, the advocate representing him argued that the advertisement and his reliance on it was a contract between him and the company, and so the company ought to pay. The company denied such type of contract, prepare relevant issues. Now, based on this, now that we've run through the problem, the first exercise in terms of facts that should be undertaken is breaking the list of events in a chronology so that you have all the facts based on a chronological manner, and each relevant fact has to play a certain role in terms of the law. So you identify what are the issues in terms of the facts. The fact is, what was the contract offered? What was the advertisement? Whether it was in the nature of contract or not is a legal question. Whether there was a contract to begin with is a factual question. But whether there was a valid and lawful contract is a legal question. So you divide the proposition and your identified issues based on law and based on facts that help you weed out what is relevant, what fact fits under which argument. Sometimes one fact may have role in 2 points of law. Now, with respect to what we've seen so far, maybe I can reduce these questions into where would a possible action lie? If there is at all any action, because the moot problem provides that all actions will be in Delhi. So the first question is, where will such an action lie? Further, whether Mr. Khadak Singh's afflictions were already known to him, and if they were known to him, whether after the discontinuation of the medicines, did they increase, they resumed to the state they were in, whether cockroach can have any liability on this is something that is again a question of law and fact. So you need to identify each issue and each issue under each head, and then read facts into each head, and then comes the final stage. Then comes the final stage of doing a research based on the propositions that you've identified. Now, these issues may be whether there's a valid contract, whether an advertisement offered is mere puffery, or whether it's a genuine obligation to recompense when the party, like Mr. Kharak Singh, performs his due and still doesn't find good health. And now comes the second part in terms of facts based on the letter of the agreement, very letter of the advertisement that was given with the disclaimer of FSSAI that any possible malady that followed after consumption of a product which was untested, whether there's contributory negligence and other sort of issues. That's something that each moot problem may throw a different line of questioning. But what your first task after having examined the moot problem is to weed out what questions, what issues lie, and then comes the legal research based on these issues. Now, generally the trend is that each moot problem will identify 2 to 3 key issues where there will be landmark judgments, and it will be your job to find out these landmark judgments. This proposition includes certain aspects which were very important in terms of contract law, as to whether there is a consensus between the parties, whether the exaggerated claims are something that is called puffery. These aspects are something that case laws would tell you, and it is your job to find out what these cases are and then present each side with supported research. So based on this, I think we can, Sonali, you can stop sharing the, this. So based on this, my again approach to any such mood problem is, once I've identified the relevant issues, it is then divided into relevant section of fact and law. Read the relevant moot problem again to identify which statement, which paragraph can be brought under which head, and under which head is it contributing, whether it's favorable, whether it's not favorable. After you've done this exercise, only then choose sides. If you've been given a side and you're supposed to prepare the arguments, once you've done this exercise from a neutral point of view, it is only then that you start researching and working the case that you've been assigned. Then you look at the problem again with your own perspective, with a side in mind, with a line of argument in mind. So with that, I would, Sonali, if there are any questions based on this exercise that I can.
Sure. Students, if you have any questions from sir regarding the proposition, relating to proposition, please you can raise your hands, or either you can put it on the chat box. Sir, as such, there are no issues related to questions related to the proposition. So I think we can take it at the end.
Sure, sure. So with this, I ordinarily wanted this session to have two bits of Q&A sessions, so that I can, with my experiences, help or share some of my experiences in either in terms of mooting, or even in terms of my own practice and general beyond mooting. If anybody has any such questions, I'd be happy to share my.
Sir, I think there's one question. The question is that can company do such claims without any test?
Okay, so I would be happy to address this question, but I think I wouldn't want shortcuts in your research as well. But with that as it stands, there is a line of case laws where you would have read, I think it's called Carbol Smoke. There was an organization which offered exaggerated claims, and some plaintiff who wasn't happy with these claims, didn't get that desired response from the product, came to sue the entity making such exaggerated claims. Now, the question is whether these claims are legal or not is a different aspect, because then it becomes a factual inquiry. But having exaggerated claims is not unique to any business. Every company comes forward and says, my product is the best. They need not have the data to prove they're the best, because the law recognizes this as something called puffery. That is making big something that may not have a semblance of truth, but that still is there still is a line between what is exaggerated and what is utterly false. So is this information, is this statement made by Cockroach P Private Limited is false, is something that you need to prove. And once you do enough to say that these claims could not have held good at all, and based on the problem, which is why my first instinct was to identify that these are mere claims, these are not scientifically proved data. Now the question is whether these claims are utterly false, or these claims are based on certain exaggerations. Now, if we are to take this example, Mr. Kharak Singh's afflictions were eased because of the medicine. However, he was afflicted with another malady. He was now addicted to these meds. So while these statements were true, Did they conceal material information? Did they misrepresent? Is what you're looking at. Because it's not only that the company makes claims, they may make exaggerated claims, but they can't make false claims. While they can't make false claims, they can also not make misleading claims. And these claims, which concealed the possibility of an addiction that may follow, were clearly not disclosed. Now, whether there's contributory negligence when an entity knows, when Mr. Kharak Singh knew that these products aren't cleared by FSSAI, is another aspect for discussion. So uh, you can have it both ways, and it largely will come down to either facts and it. But your scope is not to isolate facts. Your scope is to identify why the law would not allow, or under what uh, loophole can the company take advantage, under what law, or as I said, puffery, can the company take advantage? And that is where your research should lie. You need not have a concrete answer. Your scope of activity is to find out that loophole and justify that loophole. You may overlook the facts to a certain extent. Your primary task in any moot competition is to present the loophole in the law, or why that loophole doesn't apply, and why this company is to be held to task. So,
So I think there is another question. Aditi, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question to sir.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is that, like, how we make facts from the preposition, because preposition is facts in itself. So how can we make facts from the preposition? Like, what is the important points and what are not the important point to make the facts?
thank you, Aditi. As I said, your first activity has to be identify issues. The entire proposition has a mix of facts as well as instances which fit the perspective, which fit the aspect of a legal argument. Now, there are certain statements which fit under the misrepresentation issue, whether there is misrepresentation or not, and there are certain submissions that fit under exaggerated advertisement. So your task is not only to identify the issues and go through the moot problem as it's only a matter of fact, because when you're arguing a point of law, as in the initial question we were looking at, whether it is puffery or not is not simply a question of law. You Once you read the problem, you'll identify certain issues, whether there is a valid contract, whether the statement or public advertisements that were made are something that are permitted. These are the questions you'll boil down the moot proposition into. Once you do that, you will have to cherry pick each line and then see under which rung of the issue you can fit each one. Certain factual statements may find repetition, but and it is you to supplement that factual inquiry then with a research of on the point of law, because you will start with the research of whether there was a valid contract. Then you will look at the factual statements which say that there is a contract or not. You will look at the advertisement. That is the fact one, that there was an advertisement. Then you will look at point two, who is the person who is exercising that response to the contract. Then finally, you will research whether there was a valid contract based on their actions. Contract, as you know, is based on consensus ad idem, whether there was actual consensus as to what is the scope of the agreement. So you need to pick out from the proposition statements that fit in under each head. Now, they may generally come under multiple heads as well. So it is your task to identify under which head each factual statement goes. We were reading somewhere it said claims, and in some places it didn't say it was claimed. It was just a matter of statement. And we were reading about Mr. Kharak Singh's afflictions. Now, these are factual statements which have not been categorized for you, that this is relevant for an argument under whether there's a valid contract, whether this is puffery, whether this is an exaggerated claim. You are supposed to identify the key issues in terms of law, and any contract, for example, is based on offer and acceptance. So what is offer is also a legal question as much as it's a question based on facts. So from the proposition, you'll pick up what is the offer. In this case, it was the advertisement, if at all. From the other side, you'll say that no, there was no offer. There was no consequent acceptance because there was no offer to begin with. And from one side, you will say this advertisement itself was offer. So it all depends about how you pick up the fact and how you play with it. So that's how I'll suggest that you break down a question into a list of issues, and under each issue you put each statement of fact, and then boil down your legal research based on what is lacking. If there was an advertisement, whether that advertisement fits the ambit of permissible advertisement. I hope that helped.
I think, sir, that's all for the question relating to the
Sure.
preposition. So we can continue further with the topic.
So, as initially discussed, so if anybody has any questions about our profession in general, and uh, what line of actions they look for themselves in the future, I'd be happy to share my little bit of experience, and if in any way that helps you in your own decision making. I can understand in the initial 2 years, law school is quite a handful. So I think we've had too much of academics already for so
Anyone, if you have any questions other than relating to the preposition or topic which we had today, sir is open to answer the questions. You can either raise the hand or put questions in the chat box. Anyone?
so I'm glad people had such a quiet session. Um, how can we make our arguments strong? Hi, Prem. How can you make your argument strong is only by research. Uh, the more you research, the more uh, points of law you examine. And but one fair bit of advice is that not always a moot um, is not about getting your point through. It's about exploring a point of law to its fullest. Um, there is no particular way. In some cases your facts help you, in some cases they don't, but that's not the exercise for moot court. And as I said, it should be an exercise about exploring your own skill set and sharpening what skills you have. So uh, you can only make your argument stronger by reading more, by researching more, and that's the only way to prepare. What after so Mr. Love Gujar asks, sir, after so many years of experience, what would you suggest us? Um, I'm not sure what suggestion you're looking for, but I, if you're looking based on what you want to do in future, I would suggest that you try all skill sets, and keep your mind open to all avenues of law, and uh, be participative in all activities. I wouldn't restrict it to academics. I would suggest you should explore all avenues, all activities, be it MUNs, be it debating, be it mooting. These activities help you find, at least initially, help you find that particular skill that you want to pursue, a particular subject that you may enjoy, and there is no shortcut to growth other than reading, uh, other than spending long hours, and every success has its thousands and thousands of hours of hard work behind it. Question is, you don't stop at the 99th hour, go the extra mile, and that's the only way you find what you're looking for.
Anyone else? I think it's a really good opportunity for you people to ask questions, because I have a lot of questions, but it's not for me to ask here. So I can have an interaction later on. But it's like really good if you can ask like to relating to mood, not relating to mood, but something other than that. So
I think it's been a handsful for a Wednesday afternoon. So
I think the same.
so the advantages of virtual conferences is that people
Yeah,
can get away.
I totally understand that. But it was a
I
really good experience for knowing all those things. Thank you so much for
It's been my
joining.
pleasure. I hope whatever our conversations have been help even if one of you, and I would I would always be very keen to give any assistance from my side. My alma mater of Symbiosis Pune was my alumni was very helpful for me in my growth. So I would never discount the role a senior in my profession has had over the years. Every opportunity where I have had any success, or I have managed to find a foothold, leave alone success, is thanks to kind and encouraging people I met along the way, and no short of my alumni. And that's something that I would encourage, that always keep in touch and explore and discuss things with each other, and as well as your seniors, because they have a lot to offer, and it's always upon you to grab as much as you can from their own experiences. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I hope I get to interact with you guys at any other point as well.
Sure, sir. Definitely we'll be seeing you, I think, in more chapters of our workshop series. And thank you so much for giving your time and being here. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.